We have uncovered stunning machines used in temples to create illusion and magic. Statues that cry tears of blood, temples that roar with thunder, and chariots that levitate in the air. These were machines of the gods. Today, we are accustomed to the magnificence of the temples of the ancients and the gods that inhabited them. But it is only recently that the engineering marvels of the temple and its religious ceremonies are becoming known. What the ancient manuscripts now reveal might cause us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the ancient world.
The priests of this time were almost like magicians or conjurers, and they would manipulate the worshippers and they would generate an atmosphere. It would be the sort of peak of the particular rite of worship.
More than 2,000 years ago, religion played an incredibly important role in society. Crowds flocked to their local temples, but not for spiritual comfort.
Hello and welcome to Why Are We Like This, the true crime podcast that treats Florida like the active crime scene it is. I'm your host, David Quinones, and I am being joined on my other line by my fellow co-host from the Empire State. He's feeling a little trepidatious about his Knicks in 5 prediction. Gerald Doherty. Hello, Jer.
The math is not on my side, but I'll be on the right side of history. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
Well, our guest might not agree with you. You might know him from his efforts to keep Miami's shoreline clean, removing more than 10 tons of submerged trash to date. You also might know him as the author of Miami Creation Myth, the recently published, long-anticipated satirical ode to an imaginary origin story for our magic city. You can find Miami Creation Myth wherever books are sold. We, of course, recommend Books and Books if you're down here in South Florida. We're going to be talking about his environmental activism, the new book, and much more. Andrew Otazo, welcome to Why Are We Like This?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. I should mention that beyond being a book, Miami Creation Myth is also kind of like a full-blown content vertical. You can visit it at miamicreationmyth.com. Check out everything in the Miami expanded universe from out of Andrew's head. I'm hoping we could talk through some of the news items and so on, but particularly Florida's new brutal immigration law, cracking down on families, friends, coworkers, and the undocumented. We're going to touch on a few of the not that surprising effects from that law that we've seen on social media, at least over the weekend. But first, I want to start with you, Andrew. I was fortunate, as we mentioned before, to attend a reading of yours recently, and my family really enjoyed the book. I'm wondering if we could start with you telling us how you got the idea for the book, where you came up with this concept of a Miami creation myth.
Oh boy. The idea for the book, I don't know. My head is a carnival. There's a lot of crazy ideas in there all the time. And I happened to be on a plane ride over to Breckenridge, Colorado, for my buddy's bachelor party, where it just like, I don't know, I just started writing down the first chapter of the Miami Creation Myth. And, for, your listeners who aren't familiar with it, basically the same way the Greeks or the Romans or the Egyptians have their own pantheon of gods and goddesses, I did the same thing. So, but for Miami. My creator god is named Pachango, and he wakes up on a divine ping pong pung, and he creates the sun, and then his mother berates him about the electricity bill. So he has to turn off the sun and move to a different universe. So it's very silly. It's very tongue in cheek. But, it has turned into this massive monster, like you said at the intro, where it's not just a book, but, I've made, I think I'm at like 1,600 memes and like 60 something essays and short stories that I publish all the time on my social media handles. So it's quite the monster. And then there's the weekly newsletter, and we have stage adaptations and live readings and the audiobook, which is forthcoming. It's this giant thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun seeing a couple of, what were the names of the two young protagonists of the section that you read when we were listening?
Yes. So the second half of the book is called The Cafecito Odyssey, where basically a deep malaise falls upon Miami, and these two hero twins, Marta and Cupita, who are named after my grandmothers, have to go to the different kingdoms or communities, if you will, of Miami to get the constituent parts of cafecito to wake everybody up.
So was this a thing where like you felt and it bears mentioning that Andrew's a native Miamian. Unlike anybody on this podcast, actually, interestingly, for all the time that we've spent in Miami, none of us are native born. Did this come from a place where it was like Miami kind of lacks its own deep history? Everything is so new. I mean, do you think that some of that was playing into your decisions and the sort of mythology that you built out?
That's a good question. So for my community in particular, so I'm Cuban American. My parents are Cuban refugees. And that will tie back into our later conversation about this bill making its way through the Florida legislature. But definitely for my community, Miami is very new, for us at least. It's it has hundreds of years of history. The Tequesta and the Calusa and then the Seminole and the Miccosukee occupied these lands for hundreds of years before we ever got here. But in its current iteration, Miami is a very young city. It was incorporated, 100 years and change ago. So yeah, it is unlike, New York or Boston, which I lived in, which is 400 years old. It doesn't have that deep history relative to other cities. So, but I still think in my mind that it is such a rich place, culturally speaking, that it does deserve its own mythos.
I mentioned at the top that a lot of the folks who recognize your name probably do not from your authorship, but more from your activism and your environmental work that you've done, cleaning the bay, cleaning the the area surrounding Virginia Key. So I think it's more than 10 tons of trash that you've managed to pull out, right? How did this become a project for you? Like, where did that come from?
I'm just past 23,000 pounds now.
Wow.
And I've been at it for 7 years, and it started from a place of frustration, because I would venture out into the mangroves, which is an area that I've been exploring since I was 13. I love this area; it's beautiful, and I'd go seeking solace, and I'd wind up being very, very upset, because it looked like a landfill. Literally, like every place you stepped was trash. So I started methodically picking it up, without the slightest inclination that anybody would care at all whatsoever, because who the hell cares about some guy picking up trash in a swamp? But to my eternal gratitude, for some reason, people connected with it, because I would go out there and I'd record it and I'd post about it. And in 2019, I wanted to take the trash or this problem quite literally out of the mangroves and present it to as many Miamians as possible. So I walked the 2019 Miami Marathon carrying 35 pounds of mangrove trash, all 26 miles. It took me 9 hours and 50 minutes, and then came back the next year with the team because I learned my lesson about how painful it is to do that by yourself. And we
price.
pulled oh God, it's terrible. And then we pulled a 135 pound trash cart, the length of the marathon. So, I was very pleasantly surprised that people cared, and I'm still at it. I'd be at it even if nobody cared. But yeah, I'm going to be doing this until probably I keel over.
Jared, he's got the thing going, Gerald, where it reminds me of New York. I don't know if you remember in the city a few years ago when people were filling in the potholes, and they were getting arrested because the city doesn't like when people come and do stuff like that. Yeah, Andrew, can you tell us?
So I'm going to preface this by saying that I currently have a very good working relationship with Miami-Dade County.
Okay.
So that's the area that I mostly clean up in Bear Cub Preserve, though I've also worked with the National Park Service, City of Miami, Village of Key Biscayne. Initially, when I did start working on this on my own and word started spreading, I did get some pushback from a local employee who shall remain nameless, who was threatening me with basically banning me from these areas because technically it was trespassing, even though I had my handlers at the county and at these other municipalities, and I would always coordinate with them.
Right.
But apparently, they didn't like the fact that I was going in and picking up the trash. So that blew over. And I haven't had really any issues since then, luckily.
That's good. But one thing that you have been able to do since then is amplify this. It's not just a one-man show anymore, right? You're able to reach other people. You make group outings out of this. I mean, what was your strategy to try to, get get this to be more than just the Andrew show, but to get like a lot of people,
Right.
showing up.
Absolutely. So the videos for the content, the videos, for example, of me picking up is just the entry point for people to learn about this as an issue. So this is like I work in public relations. This is a very conscious public relations campaign that I've been doing for several years, wherein initially through social media, yes, you will see videos or pictures of me picking up trash and, spark curiosity, and people will be like, what the hell is this guy doing? And that's the point at which I can then basically educate them on how severe this problem is in South Florida. And that's then allowed me to, I guess, increase the visibility of the problem by doing like the activations that I did with the Miami Marathon, or I published an op-ed in the Herald. I've been covered in Reuters and all sorts of other outlets, Runner's World, for example. And so helping build that core base of support. And also I do take out groups with quite some frequency out into the mangroves, everyone from Frost Museum of Science to the Girl Scouts. But I don't want everyone to go into the mangroves and start picking up trash. Because if we're just trying to address this problem, where I'm at, I'm literally at the farthest end of this problem possible, like all the way downstream. There's a little stream of trash. And I want to go upstream, and I want people to make this an electoral issue. I want them to go to their elected representatives and say, I care about this. What are you doing to fix this? And if you're not, I'll find someone who will. And in order to do that, you need to have that grassroots base of support that for whom this is an important issue. And yeah, I've been at that for years.
Is there a vision in your mind of what a fix would be? Like, obviously this trash, it is, some of it is just falling from, out of people's cars or what have you. But, cause I was going to say, it's not like it's falling out of the sky, but maybe on some level it kind of is. Yeah. But I want to ask, like, is there a vision for you of what a fix for this would be at the electoral level?
Right. There isn't one fix that will solve this. There are multiple different, I guess, programs that you can implement in order to start to address the problem at the source. So most of the trash is sourced from the street level. So people will literally just leave trash like on the sidewalk, and then it rains and that goes into the gutter, and then without any filtration whatsoever, that goes directly into the bay and then to the mangroves. So there are very simple things that you can do midstream. So before it gets into the ocean, right, you can implement trash traps, smart gutters, things like that to stop the trash from getting into that ocean, or at least stop the larger pieces. Another very, very important piece of this puzzle is, once again, as the bad idea factory that it is, the Florida State Legislature passed years ago a ban of plastic bans at the municipal level.
Right.
So the city of Miami can't pass a plastic bag ban, or Miami Beach, or anybody else. They can essentially try to incentivize and work with private companies and organizations to implement alternatives to plastics, but they can't do their own bans. And so without that, that is just crippling efforts to try to reduce the amount of plastic possible. But what I would ultimately like to see is go as far upstream as possible, so to the manufacturers, and have them use alternative materials to plastics, things that are either inert or biodegradable. Yeah. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah, that makes sense. But to your point, even in places like Miami, far removed, we talked about this last week, Gerald, far removed from Tallahassee, we still feel that downward push from from the state capital, like 500 miles away or however far away it is. I was wondering, as the only one of us here on this call who's born and raised in Miami, if you could talk a little bit about the identity of being from Miami, because a lot of what appeals to me a lot about what you write and what you talk about is that it is juxtaposed against that identity, and we don't take enough pride in it. I want to read a little clip from something that you recently published on MiamiCreationMyth.com. It's from your most recent article, which you were telling me pre-show you caught a little bit of shit over, and we can get into that too. Sure. It's this. The love we hold for our city runs deep and strong, but is not a positive sense of pride. Bostonians, New Yorkers, Chicagoans, and Philadelphians are famous for insisting on the greatness of their cities to outsiders and each other. We don't really do this. Our pride is more reactive. It surfaces most strongly when we leave and or others badmouth Miami. We are proud of our diverse cultures, tastemaker status, hustler mentality, and the ceaseless drive of many of our immigrant parents who turned Miami from a southern tourist backwater into a cosmopolitan world city. We're not particularly proud of the city itself, largely because it fucking sucks, right? And I love that. It reminds me a lot, Jared. I think we've talked to you before about the movie Last Black Man in San Francisco, where the main character overhears two, sort of like white suburban girls who transplants from LA talking shit about San Francisco and how much it sucks.
Yeah.
And he says, "Do you love it?" And they turn around and they're like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Do you love it? You're not allowed to hate it unless you love it." And that's the way I feel about Miami. But what were you thinking when you wrote that, Andrew?
So as I lay out at the very beginning of that article, there's these two feelings that a lot of Miamians hold in their hearts at the same time. And again, I'm not going to gatekeep who can call themselves a Miamian. My parents weren't born here. They weren't even born in this country. And Miami is made up almost, the majority by immigrants, either from Latin America or from Europe or from the Caribbean or from other parts of the United States. But there's these two feelings that so many of us hold at the same time, where you love this city. You absolutely love the city with a passion. But at the same time, it drives you insane.
Yeah.
Because it could, for me personally, it could be so much better. Like just the complete lack of social services, for example. So, you want to get from one end of Miami, this county is huge. You want to get from Homestead to Aventura, good luck. And any situation unless you have a helicopter. So, if you have a car, great. It's still going to take you like 3 hours. If you don't, you're not going to move.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? Take a bus? No. We don't have a functioning public transit system, for example. Our politicians are much more interested in like low crawling through Little Havana to freaking try to shut down ball and chain or chase down communist conspiracies than actually providing the Miamians, their own constituents, services that they deserve, that in many cases they've paid for but aren't getting. And it's I've lived in other cities, I've lived in other countries, and I've seen what it's by no means are they perfect, but they at least have some standard wherein they provide some services of use to literally everyone, while many of our own politicians are just trying to get one up on the other guy or whatever community they don't like for whatever reason they have. So yeah, that was the source of my frustration. As for my identity as a Miamian, I live at the intersection of various different cultures. So I'm Cuban American. I was born here. I didn't speak English until I was 5. So I'm, Hispanic, but, traveling through Latin America, you're always told like, you're not exactly Latino because you're from the United States. So like, I stopped telling people I was Cuban. I would just tell them I'm Miamian. It's up to you to figure out what that means. I don't care. I know who I am. Like, you want to know who I am? Okay, figure it out. Miami. That's my identity.
It's not that far off from being New Yorican. It's, being from Puerto Rican and being Puerto Rican and being from New York is, it carries a lot of the same vibes, especially like the where you're probably from in New York. Like I'm from, Long Island and Queens, outer borough type. If you were born when I was born, then by then, the Puerto Rican bomb that had landed had sort of diffused out into Queens and Long Island. Gerald knows these classic migration patterns.
I do, yes.
Gerald's ancestors were always one step ahead, running away from the Puerto Ricans.
Actually, it was so my not my grandpa, my great grandpa was a contract builder who was constantly, if the story that they tell, and the Irish are always telling lies about their ancestry, but the stories show constantly escaping from New York City to go work on contract jobs in the Bahamas. So he was always in and out of the islands and the mainland, just depending on where the next gig was.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That in itself is a movie. One day they're going to make a movie about this era, I think, of Miami. And I'm wondering, because is
it a tragedy? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's part tragedy, part farce. I could see I could see what's his name, Big Short, Joe, the director of Big Short. What's his name?
Adam McKay
making it. Uh, it kind of ties into, and I'm not saying that it would necessarily be good. It kind of ties into like this weird flux that we've had. And from your perspective, Andrew, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, right? Like from whether it's the tech bros, whether it's like Art Basel, just something as banal as traffic, things that are more profound, like the way that, I don't know if you felt this too, but it feels like there's been a change in values. There's been like kind of like a distancing from family and community a little bit. The word that I tried to come up with when I was like, how am I going to ask Andrew this question, was like, people feel like more bruto, and I don't know the right word in English to say it, but just kind of like dumbly selfish. And I don't know. Miami is changing. I don't like the trend as somebody who's been here almost 20 years. Well, I don't know. What do you attribute it to? Do you see this same drift amongst our actual people?
What I see among different communities here in Miami that I interact with is a sense of being under siege, of like it's like the game is rigged against you. Like the city the city has always, not always, but for much of its history has had a side to it that panders to a moneyed outside class that comes in and decides that it owns a slice of the city. Um, and as a result, native Miamians or people that move here, whatever, people trying to make a go of it in the city, that don't have those resources are pushed to the margins. But I feel like that was relegated to a certain number of neighborhoods, Brickell, downtown to a lesser extent, Edgewater. Um, and then it's just, within the last 10 years and definitely within the last 5 years, you've had such an influx of so many people with so much money. Again, not just, we've always had, your oligarchs from Venezuela, or, the seven families that rule whatever Latin American country,
Yeah.
whether it's Colombia or Brazil or Argentina or whatever, come here and buy up properties and stuff. But like, there was an explosion of people coming in, especially during the pandemic, where they realized, oh, it's warm there all the time and I can work from wherever. So, why am I going to spend, $5,000 a month for a 1 bedroom in Manhattan, where I can, put that money away and buy house cash wherever in Miami and just live there. So I feel like, people, I definitely feel this. Maybe I'm projecting a little bit, that like it's just become very difficult to survive in this city. It wasn't easy to begin with, seeing as how the average Miamian, I believe, made $37,000 a year. The average family, $52,000 a year. And that's not a lot to live on. But as everything is increasing in price, especially real estate, that dream that my parents were able to fulfill, wherein they came to this country and they were able to start a business and buy a house and all that stuff, that's gone.
Yeah.
Like that just doesn't exist for me. And it feels like when I see all these different elected officials, Mayor Francis Suarez being like the prime example, but he's not the only one. He's just an easy person to like point to, telling all these tech bros and whatnot to come to Miami. I asked myself, like, are you the mayor of San Francisco or are you the mayor of Miami? Because you're not really working for your constituents. You're just trying. I mean, it's ruining the lives of so many people in the city. And so that's the pervading feeling that, I see among these different communities. And not to like rag on tech bros too much. I just feel like they're an easy example to point to, but it's throughout the professional classes here in Miami. When, outsiders tend to come in, then what they tend to do is that they form their own little, it's like Hong Kong. They form their little expat enclaves, and they only circulate. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And they only circulate in that, and then, the rest of Miami be damned.
I do think so. I was in Miami from January 2016 to around Christmas 2019, so just shy of 4 years. And I could see visibly what you're talking about with the concentrations of wealth and then a lot of economic security surrounding it, that it was a very like patchy city. You could see like the image of Miami, but you couldn't be a part of it. It was like a city where it's very easy. And I think like that transactionalism at the level of policymaking does infect a lot of people's social relationships in the city at large, where if you're just trying to keep your head above water and get a slice of the pie or a bite at that apple, that probably is going to inform how it is you orient yourself to others. Anyway, if you're struggling, you probably don't want to stay struggling. You probably want to get ahead. And so a lot of your relationships are formed around getting ahead. And it does that economic insecurity, I do think, breeds social insecurity as well, where I find that like people would, there was one time there was someone, I won't use their name, but and someone I care about very much. I said I was going. No.
Name them.
I said like I was going up north for a friend from high school. Their parent had passed away, and I was going up to honor the dad. And she said, "Oh, you didn't outgrow your high school friends?" And I was like, "What do you? I am not following. Like, I don't understand what that means." And she says, "Like, once you're done with someone, you're done with them. Like, you're on to the next. You're moving up. Brutal. You're moving up." And I was like, that is just not. It felt so cold to hear, but for her, it was like that's just how it is here.
No,
like,
but by the way, extra fucked up, right, Andrew? Because because Miami is like maybe in theory people think that way, but in practice.
That's the thing.
I got my fucking roof done because my best friend is still part of a Columbus 2001 graduating class group chat where he was like, "Hey, what's up? Who knows who I can hire for a roofing business?" And they came and did the work. And it's so crazy that like Miami is transactional in the way you're talking about, Sherry, but it's also transactional in the roots too. I mean, like, that's weird.
And it's not like that. Like that person's a great person. It's not a bad person, but just like that level of like what your priority should be. I think it is like you can see it at the level of policy making. Certainly, like like Bitcoin, NFT guys, Bored Ape guys, come on in. If you've got the money, come on and set up shop. And if you're only ever thinking about that, then I do think it seeps into the wider culture.
Yeah. Well, listeners of the show probably flagged Andrew's quiet reference to Miami City Commissioner Joe Carollo, who is like very, very famous for, exacting reprisals on citizens or business owners and people who don't agree with him or don't pay him money to, I guess, host events at their bars and pubs and whatnot. And the transactional nature of that, it reminds me a lot of like the time when the Miami, the Marlins Stadium was kind of like a point of contention, which it still is.
Why do you do this to me?
And what
why do you open up that wound?
The specific part of that diseased festering wound that I want to open up is the part where we all remember like, okay, here comes this money coming down to Miami and here's this opportunity, and everybody who should be looking out for, to your earlier point, Andrew, for the citizens, for the existing constituency, for the people who are already here. Instead, they're jockeying for, VIP tickets. They're jockeying for like, oh, if I'm Carlos Alvarez, former mayor, how can I get contracts with this, in exchange for my support for this project? How can, after I eventually get, ousted from office for my support of this project and other reasons, how can I like kind of, get my beak wet a little bit? And it's really hard to build any kind of community when the people that we elect and that are representing us, like that's their primary thing. Like Bitcoin, how can I squeeze a few dollars out of Bitcoin? Tech, how can I squeeze a few bucks that are a little bit of national relevance out of that? And it's tough, man, because I also feel like Miami is also like us as a people. We also tend to be, even though we're great at spotting bullshit, we also are great at falling for bullshit. And I don't know why that dichotomy exists.
I have some theories. I feel like part of it is Latin American culture and history. So, we love our caudillos. We love them. It doesn't matter on the right or on the left. You bring a strong man in and people they're just like, all right, fine. This is our guy. Yeah. This is our guy, because it's often wrapped up into race, and it's often wrapped up into, this is, he might be stealing, but at least he's, screwing over that community over there that we don't like more than he's screwing us over. And it's just like a general, I don't know, pervasiveness, or a general like a willingness to just pass through the fact that, yeah, these guys are going to fuck us over. Like there isn't like there isn't a culture of like, Miami is the fourth most corrupt city in the United States, supposedly.
Who are the other three?
I gotta hear this.
Good question.
Yeah.
New York, LA, Chicago, all cities that are significantly larger than Miami. Supposedly we're number 4.
I thought you were gonna go with like Hialeah, Key Biscayne. Like I thought you were gonna like name some of our.
Yeah. I'm not gonna do that just yet, but yeah. So we're the capital of healthcare fraud in the United States. We are along with London and Hong Kong and like 2 other cities, the top destinations in the world for money laundering, for real estate fraud. It's insane.
The way that you send your kids to Johns Hopkins to learn about medicine is the way that people come here for healthcare fraud. It's like the Harvard, the Johns. It's like the place to go to fucking healthcare.
Absolutely,
fraud.
This is the finishing school, and like, look, our skyline was built by cocaine. Yeah. Okay. There were bombs going off in the streets in the 80s and the 90s. This is part and parcel of Miami. This is how we, like, you go to Miami Beach, half the clubs, if not more, are run by the Russian mob. Are you kidding me? Yep. Like, they do everything in cash. Why? But this is part of our history. This is just like ingrained. And my generation that grew up here, like, this is just the air we breathe. We're fish in the ocean. This is just what we're traveling through. And we haven't had great example. It happens all the time. You bring up Marlins Stadium, but that's not the be all and end all.
No,
like,
not
that
at all.
stupid spider bridge that they're building.
Oh my God, Gerald, you haven't seen this, have you?
No.
Okay,
no.
Above, in between the museum center and on the where the 836 turns into the the causeway. In between where the Herald used to be and where the Frost Science Museum is that length of freeway. They're building in the shadows of,
oh my
like,
God,
literally,
like,
you should see, like, right below it is some of the most abject poverty, like open air drug markets, like some of the like most deeply in need of social services parts of the whole state right there. It's like the eastern side of Overtown, and they're building a fucking, like, I don't even know what it is. It's just like a concrete structure.
It looks like a spider. It looks like a fucking spider. It costs from what I remember, Gerald, maybe you can you can actually bring up the actual figure. It costs over, is it $100 million?
I remember seeing the $100 million as it's a giveaway for contract.
$840 million.
But that includes some the bigger $840 million mark. It includes, I forget, Andrew, what are they doing? They're doing like extra lanes, something that you could technically classify as useful, even though we all know that the way that public transportation works.
After study after study shows that
useful.
The more highway lanes you build, the more cars go on the highway, and congestion does not change. What changes congestion is public transit. They could have, supposedly they're going to extend the Metro Mover out to Miami Beach. Maybe in 20 years we'll see that. Maybe. But we paid a half penny tax in the 90s to send it over to FIU, to send it over to the beach. And you know what happened to that half penny tax? Our politicians didn't want to raise taxes. They lowered taxes and across the board so that they could then campaign on that. Well, they still needed to pay for all these municipal services that they're providing, picking up trash, whatever. And they took the money from that fund and put it into the general fund.
Right. Okay? To be able to facilitate tax cuts. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what they did. They took the will of the voters of this county and they shat on it. Yeah. They're just like, fuck you. You know what? This does not help me personally, but I know how I can turn it so that it will. And that's what they did. And that's one of the reasons that we don't have we have a joke of a public transit sector, and I'm harping on this, but it's not the only thing, obviously, that the city is doing ass backwards currently.
There's a poetry to this bridge because I have two different angles, one from an elevated position, one from ground level. If you have a high enough view, I get how this could look kind of nice, like ocean waves a little bit, like a little push out from each
$100
of
million
the arches.
nice.
But from the ground level, it looks like the city is under attack, and like there's kind of a poetry of this can be nice if you can afford for it to look nice.
If you have a penthouse view, this is for you. Everyone else go suck it.
Yeah, pedestrians. Yeah, you're on your own.
Well, one day it'll look great coming. Like just like people will wonder, like, what is that coming up out of the water? Why is it just what is this cement just poking out of the water? Oh, there used to be a freeway underneath it.
Yeah, it's a really nice. It's in 50 years. It's going to be such a nice artificial reef. It's going to be incredible.
From the more practical and administrative and policy focused conversation to something a little bit more cultural, we introduced this idea a few months ago when we were talking with friend of the show, Danny Rivera from WLRN.
Love him.
Yeah, Danny's a great guy, and he was at your event. I'm sure you know that. I'm not breaking news by telling you that. But Danny and I, and all four of us, were talking about this idea of like new kind of guy, like a new type of Miami guy, right? And when we were talking about the new type of Miami guy, I wrote a few qualities down. And again, this is a guy who's always been here, but it feels like culturally. And this is a guy who's not an asshole, not bad, and not as many people on the left, like Gerald and I are, would be quick to demonize. This is a guy that you go to a Heat game with. This is a fun person, somebody who only in the last few years has gotten weirdly radicalized culturally. And I wrote down these things: lifted pickup, perfectly shaped beard, shaved head. He's one of two body types: jacked or obese. He's either jacked or he's obese. Wears the black American flag hat, owns a gun, but wants to teach you how to responsibly use it. Did like 2 years of college, maybe, usually at FIU or MDC, and is firmly in the pipeline to become a Proud Boy, or to support, at the very least, policies contrary to all the stuff that we're talking about. Oh my God.
And you just described so many people I know.
Yeah. Where'd this guy come from?
They're not hard to find.
No, not at all.
They're very common. Yeah.
They're right here on Bird Road. I can look outside. Yeah. This is probably the guy that was sending you DMs hating on your most recent article. What do you attribute? This is such a broad, open question. I just wanted to introduce the idea of this guy who generally is, you catch this guy 8 years ago and his biggest concern is like the new Marvel movie coming out. Hey, bro, you want to go check that out? Like, or whether or not LeBron is going to stick around after losing to the Spurs. Now his biggest concern is, let's go Brandon type shit.
Yeah.
And like,
they're trying to chip me, bro. They're trying to chip me.
Yeah. The vaccines have chips. I hate the way that this guy, who I love, who is a friend, who are friends of mine, the way that this guy, and it's a uniquely Miami guy, which is the reason I wanted to talk to you about it. I don't know. Have you absorbed this in the same way? It sounds like maybe you know some things.
Oh my God. I know so many. I have friends like that. Like from high school, right? People that you love, you wish were better, who should know better, and they just aren't. And I know that guy intimately. I feel like first thing I want to do is blame the Democratic Party of Florida.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
They absolutely dropped the ball for decades.
They didn't give that guy a place to go. They didn't give him somewhere to be, to occupy.
I would say half of these guys can't afford healthcare. Like I would say they are not without, like they're not ungettable for like an economically populist message.
Yeah, look, and I play dominoes with these guys. And like there are ways to reach them. Like there are ways to talk to them, and there's just a vacuum. There's just an abyss where the Florida Democratic Party should have been in, speaking to these individuals, and not just the Democratic Party, but God damn it, every freaking national or state level politician that wants your vote comes down here. And listen, if you don't know Miami, like people are going to see that immediately.
Right.
They're going to call you out on your bullshit immediately. So like, whatever politician comes down here and hires a chief of staff from Michigan, or hires the state director from fucking God knows where, from Oregon, and they're like, or even worse, this is even more insulting. They're like, you know what? They're all Latino down there. So let me just get a New Rican. That had spent their lives in New York. Obviously, you have a culture
it makes sense.
of Miami.
It's look. There was a let's just say there was a communications person that was working on the campaign of one of the Florida Democrats who lost to Charlie Crist, right, in the primary. And this person made the mistake of calling out and shitting all over a friend of the show, Anna Escamani up in Orlando, and immediately was called out. It was like, who the fuck are you to come in here, you know, talking about one of the few people that's actually working hard and trying to make things better. I looked at his resume, previous stops, Stacey Abrams' 2018 campaign, Beto O'Rourke for U.S. Senate. And it's like, this guy, why are you bringing him down here to Miami? Why are you bringing him to Florida? Why are you having him critique people in Orlando? This like random gringo that's coming down. It's not handled the right way with the knowledge.
And it's insulting because that guy, look, they come here and they're like, Latinos, let's talk about immigration. That's what they care about. They're just like the Mexicans.
Yeah.
And, let's do a GOTV drive, 1 month before the election, and that'll solve all our problems. Does that fucking guy with the perfect fade and the hat and the lifted pickup give a shit about immigration? No. No, not at all. That does not register. People here are just trying to survive. Okay. And you come here and you start talking and with like bad Spanish translations. Like, again, I speak Spanglish with my friends, but like with my family, I speak Spanish. In certain contexts, I speak Spanish, but I consume most of my media in English.
Right.
So if you come at me just speaking to me in Spanish, I'm like, wait, this isn't the right context, right? You can't just translate your press release into Spanish, and I will never see that. I will never see that Spanish translation. And if I do, I'll be like, okay, well, what does this have to do with me? So like, I blame the Democrats for this so very much. And you know what the Republicans are really good at? They're really good at saying, hey, buddy, I know shit sucks right now, but here's who's to blame. It's that guy over
Pointing
there.
The fingers.
Fuck that guy. Whether it's, the trans community or undocumented immigrants or whoever pops into their mind at the time, they are so good at distracting from actual economic bread and butter issues and pressing that emotional button that's going to register.
Our you and mine, Congresswoman, representative has Maria Elvira Salazar right now has in front of, I think it's still in committee or it's being passed around, a bill to get rid of the word Latinx, which it's like, yeah, okay. and that's a perfect distillation of what you're talking about, because that's a Democrat or liberal own goal. Like, why do that shit? Come on. Like, what's the point of doing that shit, of the Latinx thing? Okay, keep it in the academic environments it exists within. But like, you're just begging to be kicked in the balls by making that into an issue. And you're giving them Maria Elvira Salazar's of the world this raw cultural grievance meat for them to feed out to the masses. You're giving them
to be like, they literally don't speak our language, basically. Like, they're literally not talking to us.
The messaging writes itself.
Yeah.
Well, that tells you what her priorities are. They are just, it's window dressing. It's what is the easiest thing I can pass in order to rile up my base and to make them feel like I did something without actually doing anything that helps them. If that's the priority, if that's what you're pushing through subcommittees and committees and you're trying to get a floor vote, then like, what the hell are you actually doing? And the Democrats could shit on her for that, but just they're not.
Well, like, it forecloses upon like more like bolder policy making. Like it forecloses upon addressing the roots of those issues. Like if you turn it into a culture war, a language game, and you make that the narrow focus of what we're arguing about in politics, you're basically saying politics isn't about very much when it could be about so much more. So I think it's smart for them to do that because A, it gets the Dems on their back foot, and B, it has them focused on things other than addressing the roots of why people feel like they can barely keep their heads above water living in Miami. Make it like that's not even a political that's outside the realm of politics. What's in the realm is language and Epic owns and what was that van from 2018? They were going around with a van. I think it was like a Colombian style van, and everyone was like making fun of them for it.
No, I didn't hear about this, or maybe
I was like, I think it was like I forget what it was, but they were trying to bring something in from Colombia, like something that they do in campaigns in Colombia, but do it down in South Florida.
I'm just thinking of the scene from Napoleon Dynamite where Pedro beats up the fake version of his opponent, and it's like, oh, in Mexico we do that all the time. That's what we do.
Yeah, like that kind of like pandering, basically.
Yeah,
that
it's
kind
pandering.
of like
Speaking of pandering, there's one issue that I really want to address, and that's the S word, which is socialism.
Yes.
Or the C word, communism, which is like basically anything that upsets a group of conservative Miamians around a ventanita is socialism.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing, what the right is doing with this term, or the way that they're redefining it, is that they're taking the trauma of so many different communities. So my community's trauma, right? We're in, we lost everything. Like there's no direct connection back to Cuba for me. Like that is severed as the son of refugees. And by the way, an undocumented immigrant for 6 years who was here without any papers until Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Cuban Adjustment Act. So she was here undocumented. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So they throw around this term whenever they feel like anything that slightly endangers their vision of the world, or any individual that might actually make a point against them, that isn't just like rabid free market capitalism. Oh, that's socialism.
That's socialism.
And you know what I want? You know what I want people to come back with? I don't want them. You don't fight on your enemies, the battleground your enemy picks for you, right? You already lost. If Democrats start off going, oh, I'm not socialist. Here are all my credentials that prove that I'm not socialist. You've lost because you can't bring across the message of what are you actually. You're just saying what you're not.
You're defining yourself against their description, yeah.
Right. So in Spanish, there's a word called aprovechado, which is someone trying to take advantage of other people for their own good, right? Or atrevido, which means like someone, like a barefaced liar, does not care. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear them say, you're un aprovechado because you're trying to use, all these people's trauma for your own political gain. Don't even try to argue against, they're not arguing in good faith. If they're saying you're a socialist because, I don't know, because you don't want guns in schools.
Yeah, that's socialism.
That's not an argument that makes any logical sense. So hit them right back and say, okay, you're un aprovechado, you're un atrevido, and that by itself will define what they are, so that they then have to come back and say, oh wait, no, that's not who I am.
We're running up against the hour, but before we'll call it an episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about with both of you the passage of SB 1718. Jared, last week we talked about the way that like we don't even really need to know the weird world that we're in Florida, where we don't even need the law, and SB 1718 is the new law that is basically criminalizing just having loved ones who are undocumented immigrants, and them being found either in your car or in your home or being employed by you. And we talked about how the effects of these laws, they don't even need to go into actual effect, like pen and paper effect. Just the knowledge seeping down into the masses of people knowing like, oh shit, we can't do this anymore, or oh, things have to change, we have to move. It's happening. I mean, we're seeing it on social media. We're seeing actual job sites being abandoned. We're seeing Orlando malls where entire teams of food court workers are either being told to leave or just leaving of their own volition and for their own safety, quite frankly. And it's this quasi world where there are people who will say, well, this is not going to stand up to a judicial review. Oh, this is going to get challenged in court. Okay, well, tell that to the half-empty or the half-finished condo projects that are just sitting there now and will be sitting there for the coming, future. I wanted to, Andrew, get your thoughts on this, see if you had seen any of this, like, early rumblings and what you think it portends. I don't think it portends anything good, but I wanted to hear what you think about this.
I think it's a very hateful law. I think it's hideous. It's disgusting, especially in a state that is composed of so many immigrants. My mother, again, to reiterate the fact, was undocumented when she got here for years. And the only reason that she was given her residency was a fluke of geopolitics and history. And people forget that. And I know undocumented immigrants. I know people with who have undocumented family members who are terrified, who are considering moving. And it's disgusting. It's just othering a group that's already highly marginalized, that gets practically no services, and it's stupid. It's shooting yourself in the foot in a state that's so reliant on the service sector and the construction sector and all these different economic verticals that are completely reliant on people willing to do really difficult work.
Yeah, that other people don't want to do, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just criminalize them, but criminalize their loved ones and criminalize their friends and criminalize members of their communities that, just for being around them is horrible. And it feeds into this ugly history of different immigrant groups getting to this country. And as soon as they get theirs, they get their papers, they're like, close the door behind me. Right. We got here the right way. Doesn't matter how we got here. It doesn't matter how we were, normalized within society. The people coming, on the next wave, they're not like me. Yeah. And it's disgusting.
Yeah, it's a sort of a shitty way to end, but I couldn't agree more. It feels terrible to see it. I mean, if you live in Miami, I'm sorry, you just don't know. There's unless you're one of those people that Andrew we were talking about earlier, who is a very recent arrival and has ensconced yourself in this small world of Brickell where you hardly ever leave. But for the most of us who have been here for any amount of time or who have connections and family and loved ones here, you know somebody who's in this situation. You know somebody who is, and I would say maybe to leave on a lighter note, I did see somebody in comments of a viral video of an empty job site where a bunch of people were commenting, Hispanics in Florida, we love you. In Georgia, come up here. Come to New York, come to Illinois. Some people come to Alaska. And then I saw somebody who was like, y'all are treating these immigrants like like it's an NBA draft. Yeah. So our guest today was Andrew Otazo. He is the author of The Miami Creation Myth. You can find him on Twitter at Andrew Otazo. Links in the show description. And also check out MiamiCreationMyth.com. Andrew, really quick, how can people maybe connect with you if they want to be a part of any of your outings, or is there anything that any other call to action you'd like to give folks?
Yeah, so I have a couple of different cleanups coming up. One on May 14th with the Miccosukee tribe of Florida. We're going to be picking up on the reservation in the Everglades. And another one at the end of June. Oh no, the beginning of June, I believe. But regardless, like if you just want to stay abreast, if you want to join me, just follow me on Instagram. It's probably the best place, or Twitter. And I always post ahead of time before I do any of these cleanups.
There you go. Andrew, thanks for coming on and talking to us about our favorite city and our state. I don't want to say it's a favorite state.
Just to cover my own ass, it was the Chiva bus. I found the
Chiva bus.
We're doing journalism here, folks.